Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Vision Alignment Show for today. Come see what you've been missing. Wow, this is going to be another great show. I'll tell you, we've got a special guest today, but before we get to that, I really want to talk a little bit more about something that happened about a year ago. So about a year ago, I had a party at my house, and this friend of mine came over, and we were talking about business and the speaking world and all that, and he's like, well, so when are you going to write your next book? I said, write my next book? I don't think I am. I don't feel like I am. But he's like, yeah, you definitely should do that. So I got to thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, maybe he's right. I should write my next book. And he said, well, what would it be on? The biggest thing for me is my self-awareness, my own acceptance. Awareness was first, and then acceptance of who I am. That has been the biggest thing for me in order to be able to help people. And I think I am helping people, and I want to continue to help people, with their own self-awareness, understanding what makes them unique. As we talked about it, and there's no doubt what that'll be. I mean, it'll be on self-awareness. And he said, well, what would the name of it be? I said, I'm guessing the name of the book is probably going to be Wink. Wink? Why wink? Well, because I have a wink. It's permanent. But I encourage other people to take pictures with me and to start to think about, if this guy next to me, meaning me, knows what makes him unique. And it's not his eye, not his eye. It's his positive personality. Well, I wonder what makes me unique. So that's the whole idea behind Wink in Winking with Wagner, is to encourage people to understand what makes them unique. So we'll do that, and putting this book together is going to be great. Haven't done it yet, but it's going to be great because we're going to break down the Wink into a four-letter acronym. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here with my guest. But the idea of understanding what makes you unique is one of those things where I just can't stress enough. I mean, at least for me, it's been very helpful. So we all have different things in life that we have experienced, and they may be more impactful for us, or they may have been more life-changing for us than others. And we feel like, we've got to tell everybody that, hey, this is the way to do it. Well, this is the way I did it. And I think you can learn from it. Now, whether you do it the same way that I did or not, still, you're going to be able to learn from the whole process that I went through. So having said that, I'm bringing on our guest today, and it's none other than our friendly neighbor, Mr. Wes Wyatt. Welcome, Wes.
Hey, how you doing, Brian?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm dynamite.
Good. Glad to hear it. Hey, so I wanted to ask you, I know we talked a little bit this morning about Wink, but what do you think about the acronym? So first is the W stands for why is it important to understand what makes you unique? So I want people to think about that from the get-go of why it's important to understand what makes you unique. What do you think about that?
About the acronym or about the W?
Just for the W. We'll take it one at a time.
Well, I mean, I think it's awesome. It's something that I don't think a lot of people think about, Brian. I mean, most people go about their day just, kind of wrapped up in, sadly, issues, whether it's the news, politics, the election. I mean, whatever's going on, people just they I think focus on a lot of negativity or worry, and worry is one of those things that I have no idea who said it, but they said that worrying is like praying for what you don't want, and that's just so negative and counterproductive. So your W, and by the way, for those of you watching, I'm great friends with Brian. This Wink is the first time I've heard it. was this morning with Brian, and I told him how genius I thought it was. So figuring
Don't
out
give me
what
too much credit. That's a little genius. That's a little much for me.
all right, very, very awesome. I'll put it that way.
All right, fine.
As good as your Brian with one eye, it's a really, really good way of turning something that's specific to you into something that can help others. And I do think that that's genius. But the figuring out what makes you unique, I think everybody should do that. If someone would just sit down and figure out, Miles Monroe said that you should die empty, and I think if you can figure out what you have to give to the world, what makes you unique, you can't beat that. So I think it's great, Brian.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you liked it. So
I didn't like it. I loved it.
You loved it. Oh, that's great. Hey, we got some guests on this morning. So let's see here. My old friend Rhonda. Good morning, Rhonda. Thank you very much. Yes, you're live. #live. I appreciate that. Don't be afraid to share this video with people. So if you would, on Facebook or wherever you're on, I guess you're on Facebook with this, but if you would, just share the video out with people. Put it in your timeline, hit share underneath the picture of the video, and we'll get this going. So sharing with more people. So I hear something going on. Oh, it's my phone. I thought I went on Do Not Disturb, but evidently I didn't.
Probably people calling to tell you how much of a genius you are.
Right. I get that all the time. Never from my wife though.
Me either.
Anyway, we got somebody else on, Chris Gross from Colorado Springs, coming in this morning. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for #live. I appreciate that. And again, share these out and share them with the world. See who else is interested in joining, learning a little bit more about what makes us unique. So yes, the W, you like the W.
I do.
Okay. Oh, you love the W.
I do.
Now, the I stands for intentionality, and being intentional with what makes you unique. So it's been important for me to be intentional with my positivity and all that. So in conversations I have with people, I may sometimes go a little too far, maybe push the bounds, but I think it's good to push the bounds and to understand, okay, so this is where I should be. Having done that, having said that, I'm wondering what you think about being intentional. How do you view that acronym?
I look at intent a lot like decision. Were you asking me, Brian, or was that rhetorical? Okay.
No, that was for you.
Intention is a great thing, but you have to have a little bit of backing behind it. Sarah Silverman, the comedian, they said that whenever someone starts to say, "I'm thinking about doing something," before they even get it out of their mouth, she says, "Stop! You won't do it. You're not going to do it because you're just thinking about it." Mm-hmm. So intention is good, but decision is better. And I do know, that there's not a D in wink, but I think that if you follow what John Addison says, he always says that with a decision, it's the death of all other options. So if you look at decide, it's got side at the end of it, and that is Latin for death. So you look at pesticide, homicide, suicide, genocide, they all end in death. Well, to decide is the death of all other options. So, if you look at that intention as just a little bit more with steroids, you got a decision. And that just means that once you figure out what, makes you unique and makes you awesome, that you're going to just, go laser focused and eye on the prize towards it. I mean, what better, two things could you have than that? I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, so I love it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear you love it. So that I, no pun intended. I mean, because I talk a lot about eyes. That eye is different than our other eye. You know, the eye we wink with, or it actually can be the eye we wink with, but not so much the eye of Brian with one eye, but it's more of the eye of intentionality. So when I think about being intentional, I think about knowing myself first, and then really just getting down to brass tacks and doing the best that I can to take care of whatever it is I'm working on, whatever it is I'm thinking about, being just very in the moment. I think that's probably one of the best ways of thinking about it for me is to understand intentionality means being present. So if I'm present in the moment and I'm fully aware of what's going on, I'm going to be much more apt to be intentional. I'm going to have a better feel for the situation, a better growth mindset, and that's different. I think that's different, but I think it's important for us all to understand that intentionality comes from that what did I say? Being in the moment, being present. And then the next letter in wink is the N. And the N stands for a new way of thinking. You know, for me, when I read, I think it was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, or maybe it was somebody else. Think and Grow Rich. I mean, it was just one of those books where, and I listened to it on tape for over, I don't know, a few weeks. But as I began to listen to it, I got to a point where I understood that it was changing the way I thought. It was changing the way I think. I mean, much like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, another book I listened to on tape, I really started to look at money different. I started to look at life different. I started to look at my kids different, my spouse different. It just allowed me to have a shift in mindset. And I think with Wink, same thing, you know, having that new way of thinking, that new way of looking at your perceived disabilities or your perceived handicaps or your perceived gifts. How you look at them is going to change how you use them. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%, you know, and it's funny that you come up with the WINK, you know, acronym, because you were just talking about, a different mindset and a different, way of action and whatnot. If you think about Morning Miracle, you know, that's something that everybody's, hot on, Hal Elrod's book. And, he's got an acronym in there that's SAVERS, and it goes through the same sort of concept. So these acronyms and these new ways of thinking, when you talk about Think and Grow Rich, what you're talking about there, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Brian, it's kind of like a rubber band. A rubber band, once it's expanded, it never goes back to its original, size. It gets stretched and stretched and stretched. And if you can, use the WINK acronym to go through and say, this is a blind spot, and this is what I'm doing to realize it, and this is what I'm going to do to have a new outlook, and this is the action that I'm going to take to make that outlook. You stretch that rubber band more and more, and it's kind of like once you go to that new way of thinking, you can't really go back to the old way. Because you start to think, man, I wasn't being my best self, when I was doing that. And so I see exactly what you're saying. Those books did the exact same thing to me. And I think that they're books that you need to read, several, the two you mentioned, and probably a dozen more that you should really always have your bookmark in, because they are the ones that, if once you get them internalized, it's game over. You'll never think the same way again.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the two I mentioned were Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Think and Grow Rich. The ones you mentioned, what ones did you mention again?
Morning Miracle by
okay. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's Hal Elrod, and it might be Miracle Morning. To one or the other. It's definitely those two words. and and then it's Hal Elrod for sure.
Hal?
And yeah, that was the only actual book I mentioned.
Did you say Hal Elrod?
Yeah, it's HAL, Hal.
Okay. I'll have to look that one up. Not familiar with that one.
Great book.
Good, cool. And that changes your way of thinking, and how you look at life, how you look at your job. Is it really all aspects?
All aspects. The things that you can do in the morning to kind of jumpstart your day. Going through and just basically putting a new aspect on. It's kind of like this 75 hard that you see everybody talking about. Doing a couple workouts a day and making one of them an outdoor workout, and drinking a gallon of water, and taking profile pictures, and reading 10 pages of a book. And there's really, here's the thing, guys, and it's something that Brian and I talked about in an interview a couple weeks ago. Everybody has the best of intentions, when it comes to, especially, coming up here in a couple months. We got New Year's Day, and years ago I come up with an idea and bought a domain name called New You Day. And if you have an instant reset of what you're doing, all these challenges and stuff are great. And by the way, I love them all. I think they're neat. That whether it's a miracle morning, Wink, 75 hard, whatever it is that you're doing, the biggest thing is you really got to know that we're human, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to do something that goes off of the path. And you really, really got to give yourself a break, because like with 75 hard, if you don't do the stuff for the day, you have to start back over again. The idea is to string 75 days together. Well, there's a lot of people that once they get to 10 days, and if they're lucky enough to get to 10 days and they stop, they're probably not going to do it again. And maybe they start off and they do it again, and they get to 3 days and they're like, I'm done. You really need to give yourself a break and have that New You Day attitude. And by the way, guys, it's not because it's my idea. You got to have that instant reset where you say, you know what? I messed up. I'm going to go back on right now. And if you do that, you're going to have a much better, ending. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But there are times where something works for some people, and sometimes it doesn't work for other people. So, what do you tell people when they're having problems? Understanding what makes them unique, and they just don't. They're not. It's not that they don't care, but they're just like, well, I don't know what makes me unique. I can't think of it. So do you just say, okay, well, that's all right, and let them go, or do you try to nurture them and try to console them, and to help them understand that it's okay not to know what makes you unique. Maybe that's one of the things that makes you unique is the inability to find it out. But what do you tell them when they're in that moment where they just can't get there?
Well, I would liken it to a recipe, Brian. I mean, some people like pineapple on pizza. I don't. I don't think pineapple goes on pizza. Yeah, so I think that if you take the pineapple and all the other stuff off that you don't like, you got what you do, and it works for you. So with a disability, a shortcoming, a way that you should be doing something different, whatever, a habit that's not benefiting you. I think that what you do is you talk to the person. It's like when you and I do a tech support together. There's a way that you have to along the way check. How many times have I said to you, Brian, do you really understand it, or are you just telling me you understand it? And you'll say, I don't understand it. I say, okay, and I switch up. Is that true or not true?
Absolutely true.
Okay, yeah. And it comes from years of doing it. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a certified anything, but I have done it enough times that I can hear the cues. I can hear frustration. I can hear all the things. And so that's why I say, do you really understand it, or are you telling me you understand it? Because I want you to understand it. And then after a couple times, does the light bulb not go off?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. And that, so to answer your question, I don't think that you can have a way to go with the same cookie cutter approach with everybody, because if that's your plan, it's not going to work.
Right.
I mean, even the Marines, as an example, they bring you into, Paris Island or San Diego, they tear you down and they build you back up. But I promise you, even though that model works, there's people that drop out. There's people that, get sent home for medical. There's people that, whatever. And at the end, they still are not every one of those Marines are not the same. They all have a different, some of them shot better. Some of them did, something. If everybody was the same, they would be this universal soldier robot, that all had this shared consciousness. They don't. So it just goes to show that even that, doesn't produce the exact same soldier. It doesn't. So you've got to make adjustments and see, okay, Brian learns this way. Like as an example, some people read, some people listen, some people write, and take notes, and they learn that way. Mm-hmm. Well, with you, if I'm talking to you and I hear that disconnect, I might have to say, okay, instead of giving directions, I need to give a visual, or I need to use a story or whatever. And I don't mean you, I just mean the collective you. Yeah. So you really, if you see someone that's got something going on that it's, that they learn different, you just really need to just adjust the way you do it. So like I said, it's great to have that wink or that 75 hard or the savor for the miracle morning, but you really have got to say, okay, how, and not necessarily the person giving it, but when you're reading it, you need to say, all right, am I really going to go out and do this? Maybe I need to do the 75 hard West version. I'll give you a great example. I lost a bunch of weight a couple of years ago on a program. The program has something called a 5-in-1. Okay. And you had to do 5 fuelings, and then you had to do 1 lean and green, which was something that you put together. Well, a friend of mine would do something, and I would call it the 5 in his name. Okay. And the reason why was because he'd say, I had a couple beers, or I did this, or I'd say, that's not on the program, right? But yeah, he was still doing okay. So we would joke and call it, in your case, the 5 in Brian instead of the 5-in-1, and it worked for him. Okay. But it was not working for me. I was an all or nothing kind of guy. I had to do it the way they said, or it was nothing for me. Okay. So sometimes I think you have to do the wink Brian edition, the wink Wes edition. So I didn't mean to give a long answer on that, Brian. It's just, number one, that's me. I'm long-winded, off topic on purpose, but I think people need to know that you may not be able to do it to the letter, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know conversations I've had in the past here with Chris and Rhonda, there have been some hurdles that they were trying to overcome. And, I just think that helping them to understand that is very, very helpful. And that really brings us to the next letter in WINK, and that's K. And the K stands for kinesthetic. So kinesthetic is a $20 word that, doesn't get used that frequently, at least by me. And the word means kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means taking action. So I'm one to take action. I like to do something with what it is that I'm learning, because if I don't take action with that, it'll be gone. I'll lose it. So 7 years ago, maybe 7.5 years ago, when I first went through a course with Carrie Oberbrunner, tough word to say, and I did all the things he asked. I mean, I did all the homework. I did everything that they wanted, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. But other people in the group, there was 10 of us, they didn't do it. They didn't follow through and do anything with it. I'm like, why are you in this? What are you, why'd you pay your money for? It makes no sense. So I I did that, and it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot to get to where I am today. Granted, it's taken 7 years, but still, that was the groundwork that I had to go through in order to get there. Still had, my IT sales jobs all along the way, and got to a point where, that groundwork that I did back in 2013 paid off in spades because I did the work when I needed to do the work. So that for kinesthetic is really what that means to me. What do you think it means to you?
Well, the very first book that you mentioned, The Think and Grow Rich,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give everybody a spoiler alert if you haven't read it yet, but the big secret of Think and Grow Rich is action. Benjamin Franklin, one of my absolute favorite people, he'd be the guy that I would go back and meet, whenever they asked those, living or dead questions, who would you meet? I would hang out with Ben Franklin. I mean, I think him and Tesla and a couple other people would be just phenomenal to learn from. But one of his things that he said was energy and persistence conquer all things. So, what's energy? Energy is action. Persistence is not stopping, and so whether it's energy or the secret of Think and Grow Rich, or kinesthetics, or whatever the word is that you want to use, if you don't take action, it's kind of like they say knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't power. If knowledge is power, librarians would rule the world. Applied knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is action. So it doesn't matter what you call it. The truth of the matter is, and pardon my language, you got to get off your ass and do stuff. Yeah, I mean, that really is what it's about. You have to take action. You have to, decide, the death of all other options. Shout out to John Addison. That you know what you have to do, and that if you don't do it, you're going to be in the same place. We'll use another book here for a second, The Slight Edge, by who is it? We'll think about that here in a second. Jeff Olson. Jeff Olson's Slight Edge. He says that it doesn't seem to make a difference in the act of doing it, but compounded by time makes all the difference in the world. It being slight errors in judgment or slight disciplines. So you got to figure, are you going to want to go on the slight disciplines and go up? Or are you going to want to go on the slight errors in judgment and go down? You really don't stay the same. Guys, I would love to tell you that you can sit and do nothing, but if you do nothing, you're going to get more of what you had yesterday. And in a lot of cases, that's not great. So you really need to take action and figure out what it is to make you better. And, that again, long answer, but it's all about action, taking that information that you learn and actually doing something with it. If you read a book and you don't do anything, it's like you never read it, so you really, if you don't put it to action and share it, especially like just today, we've shared Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Miracle Morning, Slight Edge. Hopefully somebody's going to read these 4 books, and at some point they're going to say, I was watching a morning, podcast, and boom, I got this information, and thanks to Wes and Brian, and then they're going to tell somebody, and they're going to tell somebody, and this, where we at half hour will have made a difference in someone's life.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. This is great. Good stuff. You mentioned John Addison a few times. Who is John Addison?
John Addison was a guy that worked with Primerica and a lot of different companies. He was part of the Just Do It. If you've ever seen the gentleman who I can't think of his name right off the
Nike or Michael Jordan?
No. It was. Well, I'll have that for tomorrow's podcast when we do it. But I'll think of him in just a second. But he is actually someone you need to look into, Brian, because he had the same thing that John Ritter had with his heart, with his brain. And his whole thing was always live every day like it's your last, because one of these days you're going to be right. And John's just an amazing guy that you all need to check out. He is right up here with the great Brian Wagner.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, this is awesome. Lots of stuff we covered today. I mean, we just went through the WINK acronym, and I am so looking forward to our talk tomorrow, where we find out more about Just Do It and all of that. So let's leave it off here today, and let everybody have the rest of their day back. If there's anything that if people that are listening to this replay, put in #replay. But if there's anything that you want to talk more about or you want to know more about, just ask us in the comments. So I go through the comments every day, and we continue to look at those. But again, I appreciate you all being here. I love you, and we will get back together again tomorrow at 10 o'clock Eastern. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. And as always, keep one eye on the road. Bye.